you students are we're having final exams, preparing for final presentations, final projects, and we have some external people here with us today. We're super excited to have you here with us. Without further ado, I'm gonna begin. I'm gonna begin with our land acknowledgement today. So Toronto is in the District 1 Spoon territory. The District 1 Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabes, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have all been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Before we begin today, I would just like to get the chat function just going quickly. So in the chat, please could you just tell me what program are you in, what year are you in, if you're an external partner or someone external away from Ryerson, please use the chat function and let us know. Don't be shy. So we're having an alumni here today. Thank you, thank you. Please let us know what program are you in, what year are you in. Please use the chat function. Thank you. We have HP Sustainability Program Manager. Thank you so much, Clara, for being here today. We're super excited to have you. Feel free to let us know. Okay, we have biomedical engineering, third year of PhD in computer science. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. We're super excited to have everyone from different disciplines arising and also external as well. Before we begin today, I would just like to go through our agenda. So it's officially 12:07 p.m. and I will begin with a welcome and overview of the TechTalent Accelerator. Around 12:10, 12:11-ish, I'm going to hand it over to our esteemed guest we have here today. And also towards the end, I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. So I know a lot of people have been asking in the emails and the Google Forms. We've been having questions in Google Forms. So please, if you'd like to ask questions, please unmute yourself at the end of the event. You could also use the chat function if you're not comfortable speaking up. I would definitely pose the questions for you. So to just begin, to just give a brief overview of the TechTalent Accelerator, I know so many of you, I see some very familiar names here today. You've heard me give this speech before, and I just wanted, for the new people here that don't know anything about the TechTalent Accelerator, I would like to just tell you why we created this program. So our training program was designed to launch the next generation of industry-ready talents for the Canadian IT tech sector. So we collaborated with CompTIA, which is the largest global association for the IT tech industry, and its member companies to create this novel tool. So we do have two components of our program, the ExploreTech and the ExperienceTech. An example of the ExploreTech is one of these innovation seminars we are currently in right now, and the previous innovation seminars we've been running throughout the year. We also have a Hack Tech, which we had earlier this year in March. And really, very interestingly, we had Francis as our speaker, as well as Clara as one of the mentors here with us today. So really excited to have you on board again. We also have our ExperienceTech component of the program as well, which involves industry training modules that have been created for the industry, by the industry. And we also offer one CompTIA certification course, and we also offer a 4-month internship to our students. So this program is open to all fourth-year students. We've also opened this up to a bunch of other students as well. We're opening up to alumni, we've opened up to the cybersecure catalyst students, and we've opened it up to corp students as well. So we're super excited. To just get things going, I would like to just give a big shout out to our advisory board members. We have Rita Lonka, Chris Fabes, Cynthia Mooney, Pino, we have Adam, Marco, and Gordon. We meet with these amazing people on a bi-weekly basis to just talk about how can we improve this program, how can we make it better for you, our students. And we do have some of them here with us today. I know Rita and Cynthia are here. If you're here, please unmute your mic. Turn on your camera if you can, and just say hello to our students.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And thank you to Francis for presenting. We appreciate your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Cynthia. Thank you so much. I can't turn on my camera still. Many thanks to Francis, who is supporting me on this. I was actually able to reach out to our head of sustainability for Canada, and she was gracious enough to come in and present to this audience today. So thank you very much, Francis.
Thank you
Back over
so
to you,
much,
Jessica.
Rita. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you so much, Rita. We're really excited that both of you still take the time to come and attend our event. So thank you so much for saying hi to the students. Really do appreciate it. To continue, without further ado, I would like to give a warm welcome to our guest speaker here today. We have Frances Edmonds. She's the head of sustainability impact at HP Canada. So she's responsible for business development and oversees corporate social responsibility programs nationally. With a focus on sustainability procurement, Frances is driving a meaningful change setter that supports a more circular and sustainable economic future for Canada. With more than 30 years of experience, Francis is recognized as one of Canada's top sustainability professionals, having received 2Clean50 awards and has led HP to become the most sustainable technology company in Canada. So without further ado, please let's give a warm welcome to Frances Edmonds. Thank you so much, Frances.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. All right. You're going to give me the screen?
Yes, I just handed it over to you.
Screen share one. Okay, so we're here today to talk about the circular economy. I was very excited to see that we actually have some engineers on the line here because it's particularly important to them, but it's relevant to everybody in the audience today, I hope. If you haven't heard about the circular economy, don't worry, we are going to go through it, or I am going to go through it in some detail, but particularly relevant to the tech industry and the role that it will play. I do like to take questions as we go. We do have some time at the end for Q&A as well, but if you have a burning question, please drop it in the chat and we will try and address that as we go. So I just want to tell you that the federal government, Environment and Climate Change Canada, had commissioned a report from Canada's top research body, the CCA. This is a very large 18-month research report, and I was one of the expert panel members on this report. It was just released last week, so if you're interested in finding out more about the opportunities for Canada and the circular economy, you can certainly take a look at this report, and there are some good summaries of it too. So it's a very topical subject that federally, provincially, municipally, we are looking at what are the opportunities and how do we implement the circular economy in Canada. So just a little bit on HP, of course, that we are a social purpose-driven company, and that by 2030, we aim to be the world's most sustainable and just technology company. So what we're going to cover today is what is the circular economy and why we need it, what does it look like, how does it, what does it feel like, what are some examples so you can make it real, and then obviously what role you can play. And you might think that this seems a bit altruistic, but actually we're able to show today that sustainability and circularity is a critical business imperative. Over $1 billion in business over the last 2 years, and it was much more in the last fiscal year for HP. As a result of our leadership, we know that customers are expecting it, and we know that pretty much everybody in the value chain is expected to be delivering on sustainability today. This is the proof points as to why we're Canada's most sustainable technology company. I will make these slides available, so I don't intend to go into this in a lot of detail. But because we're here from a tech perspective, you might be surprised to see that the world, the proof point that we have the world's most secure printers and PCs is a proof point in a sustainability or circularity discussion. I'm not going to get into details on that, but I just wanted to point that one out. So when we look at where HP is going to become the world's most sustainable and just technology company, a particularly important piece here is that we are planning to reach 75% circularity for products and packaging by 2030. And what that means alongside this big 2040 goal is that there isn't a single piece of our business that won't have to change. Now think about that. That is a pretty awesome, exciting thing. It could be a little terrifying, but there is no area of business that is not going to be impacted by those two goals alone. And then there are lots of other goals that we're working on. So I don't particularly want to get into our strategy. Let's jump into why we need the circular economy. So this was a newspaper report in January of 2020 that we had hit 100 billion tons of material being extracted from the planet to make the things that we are currently viewing this on or all around our house. Now, 100 billion tons is a lot, and obviously it made the headlines, but it's pretty unsustainable. And if we think about Canadians, we are a very wasteful society. We like to think we're not, but actually we are. If everybody on the planet lived like a Canadian, we'd need 4.75 planets, and obviously we don't have that. The good news is that not everybody on the planet does live like Canadians, but they all want to. And so we actually have a moral obligation to be doing something about our overconsumption, but also to be leading the way in having a developed lifestyle, but one that is not overconsuming. So let's think about the impacts of this overconsumption. What does it really mean? I mean, is just digging more oil out of the ground or more metals out of the ground a problem? We can just keep doing that. We're a big country, aren't we? So the extractive industries, which is that oil, metals, pigments, whatever else that goes into the technology that we use today, and farming, and I'm going to keep farming aside because that's not my area of expertise, but is responsible for 50% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, which are causing the climate catastrophe. And if you are following what was going on in Glasgow over the last month or so, we are being told that it is a code red for humanity. There's no other way to put this. We are in a complete crisis. And you can see what's going on with just 1 degree of warming in Canada today, both east and west. It's pretty staggering with 1 degree of global warming temperature increase. So this 50% of greenhouse gas emissions, if we could get rid of that, that would be pretty impressive. What's also happening as a result of all this extractive industries is 80% of the species loss. And for those of you who are studying engineering and don't really know much about why that's important, let me just give you the why that is important. Many scientists are telling us this is an even bigger crisis than the climate crisis. So I'll just leave that one there. But the planet basically works. Everything is interconnected. Nature is a very well-balanced, finely tuned machine that's developed over the millennia. And you can use the analogy that it's like a finely tuned Swiss watch. And inside that watch, every little piece works nicely together and it's all playing well. What we do when we knock off species and cause them to go extinct is it's like we're pulling a piece out of this finely tuned Swiss watch and we're throwing it away. And the reality is we do not know when that watch is going to stop working. We are conducting an uncontrolled experiment on the planet. And we are part of this planet. So we need to tackle this greenhouse gas emissions and species loss through doing less extraction. And this is how we work today. We dig stuff out of the ground to make something. We use it, and you could think of something like a plastic stir stick or a coffee cup for a very short period of time, and then we throw it back in a hole in the ground. That is really not smart. And as Canadians, we think that we do a lot of recycling, and so that's okay. 2 things wrong with that. One is it's not going to fix the problem. 2 is because we feel guilty about over-consuming, we hold up an object and we go, I wish this could be recycled. So you put it in the recycling bin without even knowing if it can be recycled. And what you do is you contaminate that entire recycling bin. So we got to stop wish cycling. We only recycle the things that we know that can be recycled, and we really have to do something with this linear economy. So we have to stop thinking the way we were thinking. We need to change product and service design. We need radical collaboration across all levels of society, whether it's within an organization, between governments and business and nonprofits. Everybody needs to be leaning into this. And then only then do we get to this reverse cycling. So there are 5 business models for circularity. The first one is that anything that you're building, and this is for the engineers in the room, you should only be using circular supplies. So that's renewable energy, but things like recycled content, those are the key pieces before you even get to building the products to make sure that everything is circular. Then the single biggest thing that you as an individual can do is to buy whatever you buy less, but whatever you do buy as a service. And I'm going to show you why in a little while. And we want to extend product lives. We want to share things. Airbnb, Uber, some good examples, but we really need to put that on steroids. And only then do we get to the resource recovery piece. So this is HP's circular economy strategy. And let me start at the bottom here with the first thing is you want to design products that can be maintained and upgraded. And let me explain to you how the linear economy has really stymied this whole thing. We have customers today who, for the most part, buy based on the lowest price in the door. And the cheapest way to make a notebook computer is to take those, let's say, 1,000 components, put them inside the housing and glue them in there. That's the cheapest way to make a laptop. But what does that mean about repairability and upgradability? It means it's functionally non-repairable. It also means it's very difficult to recycle. So now what you've done is made a product that's cheap, yes, but it's not long-lived and it's not good for all of the other things that we need. So this leads into that circular procurement as being a very important lever that we need to pull as an individual, as an organization, as governments. This is the key lever that will help us get to where we need to be. So from HP's perspective, the next thing is being able to offer products as a service. And that sounds like a simple thing to do, but it is not. It requires a lot of rejigging of your route to market, your sales cycles. And for Canada, where we're a land of small, medium businesses, helping companies get over that hump of shifting from selling boxes to selling services, because you could put yourself out of business very easily. So unless we can help the small businesses in Canada get over that hump, we're not going to get to a circular economy. Then we need to be able to make products reusable and refurbished, and that's a very big area of growth in Canada today. And then only then do you look for this material recovery and reuse. And in particular, for us to get to that 75% circularity rate, we're going to have to start recovering more parts and putting them back into new or refurbished products. Excuse me. So hopefully you're all wondering, what is that weird looking thing on the right hand side there? This is a picture of a 3D printed heart, and it's to remind me to explain to you the role that 3D print will play in enhancing and enabling all of these other factors. So the first one is 3D print shortens supply chains. So BMW have HP 3D printers sitting on their car production line, printing the parts just as they're needed. That's a pretty awesome thing. And with the supply chain disruptions that are going on today, that's a pretty important thing. The second one is in having an infinite inventory of spare parts. If our engineers were to design everything that they are designing with 3D print capability, whenever that product broke down or needed a spare part that could be 3D printed. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Okay, I'll keep going. If it was originally designed to be 3D printed, then you could have, if you had a broken thing, you could go down to your local home hardware and ask them to 3D print you a new piece for that particular product, which will extend the life of many products. So they won't be thrown away before they really are dead. If I show you the potential here, on the left-hand side, you can see a traditional, I'll say it the English way, aluminium designed part. This is a spare part for one of our wide format printers. And you make that part by taking a block of aluminium and scraping away the bits you don't need and drilling holes where you want the holes. If you go over to the far right-hand side and use this thing called topological design, where you put the strength and the materials just where you need them, look at the awesome carbon footprint reduction, weight reduction, and cost reduction that you can get. Now scale that across everything we make and use in our industrial economy today. That is pretty awesome. So it all starts with design. And we've had a formal design for sustainability or circularity program since the early 90s. And what's interesting here is all of the usual suspects of making things lighter and smaller and more energy efficient are in here. But what you might not think about as being obvious is the social impact over here, that we can design to include social impact as part of our production and use of products and services. We can design for repairability, and there is actually a way to measure repairability. This particular product scored the highest marks that had ever been given by a company called, an organization called iFixit, whose sole raison d'etre is to take a look at different products and tear them down and see how repairable they are. So your next tech product that you buy, you should be thinking about the repairability of it. Are spare parts available? Can it be repaired? What I'd like to think about is, the circular economy seems a bit complicated, but it's really nothing more than what our grandparents did. So here that you can see this very large product, our goal is to take back everything that we sell. We don't want to take this back, it's too big. You can see a human being would be standing on this gantry here. So this product is deliberately designed to not ever have an end of life, totally field upgradable. And this is the way everything should be built. Think about that. So I talked about moving to buying things as a service. And it's a really good example here. When you look at the average impacts, the embedded carbon in a particular, in a PC is about 80% of the impact. So if you can use that product for longer, you will spread that carbon footprint over more years. And so you're actually decreasing the carbon footprint. And we did a study. We used a tool called life cycle assessment, which is the best scientific tool we have for analyzing different impacts. And usually it's used to look at an industrial process against another industrial process. Here, what we did was we looked at the difference between buying something as a service or buying it and owning it. In this case, it's a PC. So this is device as a service, is HP's name for PC as a service. And what we were surprised was that, you saw the carbon footprint slide beforehand, but almost in every category that we looked at, the impact was reduced just by the simple act of buying as a service. And you can go and have a look at this white paper here and the URLs on this slide. So that's pretty exciting that, I started off with some dire news of, 100 billion tons and 50% of greenhouse gases and 80% of species loss. We have an opportunity to make a change and a significant dent in that. So these are the two. I want to tell you about a service that HP offers for consumers. There are over 10 million subscribers for this service worldwide, so it's very popular. And this is a really good example of where a service, a circular economy solution, solves a problem for customers, for the business, and for the environment. This is a sweet spot. It's a brilliant thing. So what you're doing, instead of going to the store and buying your cartridges for your printers, and it's both for ink and toner today, you sign up for a printing subscription service called Instant Ink, and you can pick the number of pages you want to print, and you pay more or less depending on how much you want to print. It's very flexible. It's a lower price for customers, and it's really awesomely convenient because you never have to worry about ordering your cartridges again. The printer does it for you. And we ship them to you in bigger cartridges, in less packaging, and we include the recycling bag in the box, so we get more cartridges back. So you can see the impact that this has in terms of carbon footprint, energy, and water use. And part of that is through not having thousands of people driving to a store and picking stuff up, partly because we can ship in larger containers with less packaging, but the impacts are pretty awesome. So this just shows you one real life example of where making a business change is good for the business as well as all of the other players in this ecosystem. So it can be done. when we think about circularity strategies, just thinking about HP's print business here, you can see we're eliminating single-use plastics. We're including post-consumer recycled content. By 2025, 30% of our print and our PCs will have 30% post-consumer plastics in there. And I'm just going to skip through here to talk a little bit more about this closed loop plastics. Before I jump into this, do we have any questions? Not hearing any, then I will keep going. So our Take Back and Recycling program called Planet Partners is over 30 years old. And 20 years ago, our engineer, wonderful engineer, was sitting there looking at these plastics that were coming back through our recycling program and going, well, these are very high value plastics. And what we're doing is we're recycling them, but we're recycling them into lower grade things like cafeteria trays or wire spools. But this is high value plastics. Wouldn't it be cool if we could take that plastic and put it back into the same product, the closed loop? And so we looked globally for who could help us do this. And we ended up in Montreal with a wonderful plastics recycling company called the Laverne Group. And for 2 decades, we've been working with them to make plastics circular, and we've been able to do it. This is what it looks like from a cartridge perspective, or even from a piece of equipment perspective, that we can take those plastics. Metals are easy to recycle, they'll keep going around, but plastics were always the hard thing. And so we weren't getting enough cartridges back. So what we started to do was add in plastics from other used sources, like used drinking water bottles and used clothing hangers. And then more recently, we have started adding in ocean-bound plastics coming from Haiti, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But here you can start to see that these plastics now can keep going around, and we have been able to reach a plastics chemistry where it can go around and around and around. It doesn't degrade over time. So my question to you in the audience is, if we can do this today, and it's Canadian know-how that's doing this, why aren't more companies doing this? And the answer is that nobody in Canada is buying with post-consumer recycled plastics in mind. We all love to recycle, but nobody is actively searching out for products that have post-consumer plastics in them. And if we're going to fix this plastics problem that we have in the environment, we simply have to create a market for these used plastics to get back into that circulation. And this is a great example of how it can be done. So it's not only good that we're taking those end-of-life plastics and putting them back into something, we can actually show that it has a lower carbon footprint and water and energy impacts as well. And people often seem very incredulous around this because they don't understand the amount of energy that goes into making virgin plastic, because it's so ubiquitous all around us. In fact, many people in Canada don't even know that plastic is made from oil. So, there's a lot of lack of knowledge out there. But today we're using around 1 million used drinking water bottles a day in this process in Montreal. And if you laid all of those bottles end to end, they would stretch to the moon and back and more. So this is a big process. This is happening at scale. And lots of other organizations could be doing the same thing if there was a demand in the marketplace through procurement. So I mentioned that we started to add ocean-bound plastics. This is a picture of Rosette, who is a waste picker in Haiti. Haiti is a very poor country. This is where an example of that social impact starts to play. Word got out that we were adding used drinking water bottles into our plastics recycling process, and a bunch of nonprofits approached us and said, could you take these ocean-bound plastics that are being collected in Haiti? And a wonderful recycler said, let's give it a try. So lo and behold, fast forward, we are sourcing tons and tons of ocean-bound plastics, as well as creating a social impact in Haiti, because now Rosette can afford a place to live. She can put her kids in school, and we're starting to raise an economy in Haiti, which, as you know, is very badly decimated through hurricanes and earthquakes and civil unrest. So this slide is hard to keep up to date because it just keeps growing. You can see here the world's first notebook, the Elite Dragonfly, the world's first notebook made with ocean-bound plastics. And we have customers today who are buying this product, not only because it's an awesome PC, but because it's made with ocean-bound plastics. And there is a lot more opportunity to go. And I've lost count of the number of products we're now putting ocean-bound plastics into. So let's keep encouraging more organizations to do this. And I just want to talk a little bit about where the impacts are in an organization. As supply chains have gone global, the carbon is hidden in the supply chain, like in that pie chart that I showed you, but so are a lot of the other issues. And, we talked about HP becoming the world's most sustainable and just technology company. That means we have to be considering human rights and digital equity and a whole bunch of other things, besides all of these things here that are in the supply chain. So if we can start to shorten supply chains, if we can start to be more attentive to this through circularity, we can start to mitigate many of these things as well. This is HP's full carbon footprint. And the reason I'm showing you this, particularly for the engineers in the room, is I want you to think carefully about this. Not the fact that HP publishes this and has been doing for some time, but to think about where the impacts are. We saw the iceberg. Here you can see for a 55,000 person company operating in, I think, 60 countries, those employees sitting in pre-COVID HP offices and doing the work that we do to deliver our products and services to our customers, it's still only 1% of our total carbon footprint. So this is pushing all organizations to think about where their impacts are. You don't need to go and measure accurately, but you can certainly look at this as a proxy of where, if you're working on your own sustainability program and circularity, where does the work need to go? We're in the decade of climate action. We don't have time to keep reinventing the wheel here. Changing light bulbs and recycling bins and banning plastic straws in your offices is no longer good enough. Never really was, but people feel they have to start somewhere. We need to think about the big rocks. And going after how you buy and what you buy to influence the supply chain stuff is really important. We talked about the plastics, we talked about the carbon and all those other impacts. So I'm going to ask you, no matter what institution you're in, or if you're studying or working, to be thinking about this definition of circular procurement. So what we're trying to do is make sure that an organization gets the best value for money. This does not mean the lowest price, which is what most procurement people are measured on today. When buying the most sustainable services and goods, and obviously I've flipped that because in the circular economy, it's all about services, from the most sustainable suppliers. This is important because if we're going to do this at scale, it can't be one hero product per company. It needs to be all products. So it needs to be the suppliers themselves. And what are they doing? Like HP is doing today, paying me to come and talk to you about the circular economy because it's an important thing for Canada as a whole. And it needs to align with the organization's purpose and goals. We have more than 32 million Canadians living in jurisdictions, municipalities that have declared a climate emergency. Yet if you looked at how those municipalities are buying today, you wouldn't find the term climate or carbon in those bid documents at all. We need to change how we buy to focus on the things that are important. I'm just going to wrap up here with a little bit of information on digital equity. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it plays into our circular economy concept here. So HP has a goal to accelerate digital equity for 150 million people by 2030, I think it is. When we think about digital equity, and again, we're in a tech accelerator here, we're all part of this. We want to think about digital equity. What are the components that make up digital equity? We would want to make sure that, hardware is only one component. We know with the digital divide charities we work with, most often it's connectivity that's an issue. We need literacy and then digital literacy, and then we need relevant quality and relevant content to be able to ensure that we have digital equity for all. And you might think that this is a developing nation issue, but it's not. It's here in Canada too. We have a digital divide and we can all contribute to it. And one thing you could easily do tomorrow is to go and find those spare devices that you've got sitting around in your parents, your home, your school, your organization. We've got a bunch of youth who are trying to study at home on a cell phone or a shared computer with siblings and parents. They need access to technology. And if you've got an older device, and up to a 10-year-old Windows device sitting around that's still working, you could refresh it and donate it to somebody who needs it. So this was HP's response to one of the responses to the pandemic, which was to take an old piece of software that we were selling and put it into a package here. You download that software onto a USB key and you can stick it into, as I said, up to a 10-year-old Windows-based computer. It will automatically wipe any data on there, it'll give you a pass or a fail, to HP's privacy standards, so that that person can feel safe in giving that device for a second use or even a third use. It then uploads a light operating system, a Zoom client, and a Chrome browser. So that device is now just good enough for a kid to get started studying. And I'm sure that all of you can find at least one device. And then on this website, you can find examples of what kind of nonprofits would take that and get it to the needy people, whether it's families or youth that simply don't have access today. Even if you just drop it off at a food bank, they may take it. So lots of opportunity for you to participate tomorrow in the circular economy in extending product lives. So I'm going to stop there with this quote from one of our founding fathers, that the betterment of society is it's not Francis's job. It is my full-time job. I'm lucky enough and privileged enough to have that. But really, we all have to lean in at this point. And this was, 80 years ago. This is our founding fathers talking about this. But the timing has never been more critical or important to get us out of this linear cycle where we're digging all those 100 billion tons out of the ground, causing those species losses, and just throwing it back in a hole in the ground. It's really not smart. The circular economy is not going to solve all of our problems, but it has a very good chance of helping us buy some time to really figure out how we fix all of the problems. But unless we start working on this tomorrow, yesterday, we're really heading for some problems. So I'm hoping that it's given you a good idea of your opportunities, for those of you who are still studying, to be thinking about how you integrate this into your courses and what you'll be doing when you graduate, and the kinds of companies or organizations that you might want to work for, who are starting to think about this, purpose-driven organizations who we can all lean in to fix these problems with radical collaboration and a good understanding of what the circular economy is. So I will stop there and see if we have any questions.
Francis, this is Cynthia.
Mm-hmm.
So we know with the global climate change and various things that are happening, and it's so easy just to say, you know what, I'm not the problem, it's these companies. Companies are the problem. What's the one or two things that you think we as individuals can do to be able to help the problem?
The simplest thing you can do, it's not necessarily the easiest, is to go and talk to your elected representatives. They need to hear that we need government policy and practices that will help support businesses to transition. And next time you purchase anything, think, do I need it? Could I get it used? Could I share it? And when you do buy it, make sure you're buying with sustainability in mind. Asking those questions will help all businesses align on, yes, my customers are interested in this and I should be doing more on this. And, sustainability in many organizations is really at the very beginning stage, and it's quite people dependent at that point in an organization as you try to change organizations. So it takes people to be very deliberate and forceful and, not stop talking about it. And then as it becomes more ingrained in an organization and mainstreamed, more people have an opportunity to join in. But it really does require leadership and in the initial stages. So all organizations, but particularly speaking to your elected representatives, because if they're not hearing from you, they don't think it's important to be working on this.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
So in terms of what would you say are the major challenges associated with recycling? Let's say for like the lay people, would you say like it's a lack of knowledge that they don't know, or it's not like enforced enough?
Well, I don't know how you enforce recycling, so it's a good question. I think everybody wants to do recycling, but they actually don't know what can be recycled. And so some simple things, in the city of Toronto, there is actually a waste app that you can download and look up what is recyclable. But I think the simplest thing is to say, if you're not sure, if you do not know that it can be recycled, don't put it in the recycling bin. And a particular thing is when you start to look at plastics, anything that's got food on it can't be recycled. Anything that's got a label stuck on it can't be recycled. Anything that's two types of plastics together typically can't be recycled. So many of our packaging do contain these mixed plastics. So start to look for packaging that is as minimal as possible, is single types of plastics. It's not painted, it's not glued, it doesn't have labels stuck on it. So you can change the way that you buy to reduce packaging. A good example might be, there are quite a few companies today who will sell refillable containers for laundry soap, or even go down to laundry, just it looks like a piece of paper, a laundry stick thing. You don't even need those plastic tubs that keep the pods or the liquids in. So there's lots of room for innovation and design changes here, and you can start to signal by practicing with your dollars. It's pretty important. Good question, thank you.
So I'm just monitoring the chat function right now, and we do have a question from Manhar. He's asking, what are the biggest challenges HP is facing towards sustainability goals?
Well, the circular economy is called the circular economy because it's about an economic-wide transition. So even if we were being the most brilliant company on the planet, and we are, no, I'm just joking, it's a journey, right? But we can't do it alone, which is, partly why I'm here talking to you today, because we need everything to change. We're going to change everything in our business, but we need everything around us to change too. And I think there's some pent-up demand, but helping to spread the word about this is particularly important. But for us, it really is helping to change the ecosystem around us to encourage more participation in the circular economy so that it will snowball and take off. I think those are the key factors for us, is working well within our house and making sure that we've got everybody trained and everybody understands and everybody's aligned and rowing in the same direction, which most well-run businesses can do reasonably well. But it's then the wild card of how do you change the ecosystem around you, which is much, much harder to do. And I've been working on this for about 5 years now. I think we're actually reaching particularly with this federal government research, there's a criticality of support and knowledge and awareness. And I think we're getting close to a tipping point now where it's going to be stop pushing hard, but now, okay, I'm with you, Francis. What do I need to do? Not, oh, well, what is it? I mean, why do I need to do it? Now it's, yes, you've convinced me. Now let's get on and get it done. So that's the good news.
Yeah, thank you so much, Francis. We have another question as well. The question is, which materials are difficult to refine, recycle, and what type of research is being done or is required to overcome these challenges?
So metals are very easy to recycle because they don't degrade as you recycle them. Plastics, as I said, have always been the holy grail of recycling. But we've proven it's possible. So really then we get to the difficult part for us when we were starting down the journey of making plastics circular was finding a clean enough feedstock of used plastics to put back in. And that's why we ended up with the drinking water bottles and the clothing hangers, because we could find clean streams of those. And typically our recycling programs in Canada today are delivering very mixed and dirty products. and that's not good for recycling. So the cleaner the feedstock, the better. The more homogeneous it is, the better. So thinking maybe differently about, blue box type things and whatever they're called across the country, because we have different systems, and even within a geography, commercial recycling is different than home-based recycling. And we need some consistency there. We need to be really trying to harmonize as much as possible so that the individual consumers understand what can and can't be recycled. But it's design. The circular economy is trying to fix a design problem, not a waste problem. If you fix the design problem of the individual goods and services and the ecosystem that they're playing in, you don't have a waste problem.
Thank you so much, Frances. Thank you. For anyone else that has any questions, please feel free to like unmute yourself, or if you're not comfortable talking, please use the chat function, ask a question. We have another question. Okay, so how or where can people from like different fields get involved in such like research projects? Like I know there's some researchers here in our midst as well. Like what is a good place to start? For example, like an electrical engineer or someone from like the Faculty of Science. Like, what do you think?
So I would start by thinking whatever you're working on, think about the life cycle of that product. So, if we go back to those 5 business models of circularity, what are the inputs into whatever it is you're working on? So renewable energy for sure, recycled content, whatever it is. So those initial inputs, then thinking about how can this be delivered as a service rather than a transactional short-term thing. But definitely thinking about the full life cycle. How am I going to help my customer reduce the impacts as they're using my service or good? And then also what happens to it when it's reached the end of its first life, second life, or permanent life? How do we bring that all around? If we're not thinking about that at the front end, we're really consigning that good to being a drag and really linear lock-in, this concept of we lock in the linear economy with the decisions we make today. So if we're designing a building today where we're not thinking about those things, particularly the demolition of that building, we're locking linearity in for the 80, 100 years that building is going to be around. So design decisions made today are very, very important. Hopefully that helped.
I do have a final question for you, and just because like we all have some idea about sustainability and the importance of sustainability, but like I'm just thinking about like people that know nothing about sustainability, like a different generation of people like that have no background knowledge about sustainability. Well, the question to you is like, how do we make them care about like sustainability and just like sustainability in tech as well?
Well, tech has a huge opportunity here because everybody's using it, and that HP refresh was a good example.
Exactly.
You're right. We have a very undereducated population in Canada, which is why I sit on the board of Learning for a Sustainable Future, because I really believe we have to do a lot in the education space. But there's a lot of education out there, free resources, whatever. I would encourage all of us who are here today to start talking to people about it. There's been some reticence around the issue of climate catastrophe because it just seems overwhelming to people. But the more we have the conversations, the more we can see the ideas and the options. And I'm not the keeper of all the ideas. Like this is sustainability is a team sport. Everybody has something they can bring to the table. Every single job has an opportunity to build sustainability into it. You just have to. If we think of the carbon thing and the climate issue, I always tell people today in my company, we now need to look with one eye, put a sustainability pair of glasses on. One eye has that dollar traditional thing, but the other eye has a carbon lens. So we're now looking at things with multiple lenses so that we're not only just thinking about the dollar, the almighty dollar, because it's missing measuring all of the things that are important. And if you don't know, come and ask an expert.
Yes.
Around, right? Post your question. There's a lot of people willing to help. yeah, share the knowledge widely.
Yeah, share the knowledge. That's very important. That is the end of our questions. I don't know if anyone has anything further to ask. This is your final opportunity to mute yourself. Okay, we have a comment on the chat as well. It's a long one. I'm just gonna read it out from Anna. So she said, I did a research for a geography course and I found many problems with unused electronics. There is a pattern of electronics to have a lifespan of 2 years. The electronic waste causes a massive damage to the environment, contamination of soil and water, and social inequalities because of mining copper, lithium, and other minerals. Do you know of any initiatives from other corporations to increase the lifespan of the electronics? I only hear from HP. That's a really good question.
Thank you. Yeah. Lots of companies are working on this stuff. HP is a leader and we're very proud of that, but we want to bring the industry with us too. So the industry is starting to see that we need to do better as a whole. And we do actually work with competitors quite often. I know we have somebody from Lenovo on the board here. And AMD as well. So we have to come at this collectively. And we're all part of a value chain. So sharing our knowledge and having leaders being out there and pulling the industry is important. But I keep coming back to this role of procurement. If we keep buying the cheap, disposable, quote unquote, products, then that just sets that cycle going. Whereas if you can get into this services function, that sends a signal to the manufacturer, build a longer life, more repairable product because the manufacturer is on the hook for keeping it alive. And we're at an inflection point, I think, where Apple did just announce they're going to make repairable spare parts available and make products more repairable by individuals. So I think we're starting to see a movement in the industry, which is great because then it gives us a license to do even more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Francis, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I know how busy your schedule is, so thank you so much for impacting such knowledge and wisdom to us today. I'm really excited. The students are excited. I know we're live streaming currently. We have some viewers watching us right now live. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. To all our guests that also took their time to be here, thank you so much. Thank you all so much. This is our final event. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I just want to say something. Like, I'm going to be sending out an email later to early next week regarding what kind of events you would like us to do starting from next year. We really want to hear back from you. We want to really hear back from our partners, our students as well. What kind of events would you like us to actually start hosting next year? So once again, Francis, thank you so much, everyone. And that brings us to the end of today's event. I'm going to stop recording.